Oh yeah!
Hi, my name is Benjamin Oberman, and I'm with Film Festival Flix, and we're here today with the Mountain Adventure Film Festival and an interview with Schuyler Greenleaf, who's the project manager from the Yosemite Conservancy. Schuyler, how are you doing today?
Very well. Thank you, Ben.
Well, I'm so excited. I've been a huge fan and supporter of the Conservancy for years, having visited and been lucky enough to spend a lot of time in the park, which I think is one of America, if not the world's greatest treasures. And part of what I've come to learn over the years is how a lot of what happens in that park and what I get to enjoy comes because of the support that the Conservancy is able to provide. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how the Conservancy was formed and how it operates?
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're already a big fan. Obviously, we think Yosemite's pretty special as well. The Conservancy is a really fabulous philanthropic organization. So we're donor-based. We fund grants to the park, and these could be projects that support anything from trail maintenance to wildlife conservation. We have funded many museum exhibits. So the breadth of projects is just huge. We also support programs, so we run a volunteer program in the park. We run an outdoor adventures program to help visitors of all ages and walks of life to engage and to fall in love with the park a little bit more. And then we have bookstores all over the park as well that sell educational materials, books, maps, that kind of thing. So it really, truly is impossible to come to Yosemite and not somehow interact with the Conservancy. We have been around for about 90 years, so we're an old park partner, and in that time we've been able to support nearly 500 projects. So my role is to help manage those project grants that are awarded each year. We this year are funding 41 new project grants. And that is in addition to a huge project that we have going on to restore the Mariposa Grove of giant sequoias. It's our biggest effort yet. It's just a huge undertaking in partnership with the park. We are about $16 million into a $20 million commitment for that project. So there's a lot of really exciting things going on in my world. I would love to tell you more in detail about some of the projects if you think your listeners might be aware of those.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get into the next ones, can you explain what's happened to the Mariposa Grove and why it needs to be restored, and what restoration of a grove like that actually entails?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, so the Mariposa Grove was part of the enabling legislation that was protected 150 years ago. We just celebrated the sesquicentennial of that landmark legislation. It's a pretty rare grove. These giant sequoias grow in just few places along the western slope of Sierra Nevada. And so back in 1864 and even before that, the idea was to encourage visitation, to get people excited about this idea of protection and this idea of saving public lands for all people. So the trail system, for example, and the road system was built in such a way that you could get visitors right there at the base of these giant trees. And over time, of course, we have learned that that's not necessarily the best thing for the trees. The road system in many places is now diverted water away from the roots of the trees. And so the idea of the restoration project is to really increase the resiliency, the ecological health of the grove. So hopefully these ancient trees will be around for another 2,000 years. We're also really excited to be able to greatly enhance visitors' experience when they come to the grove. I think by taking some of that infrastructure away from the trees, it'll really return a sense of reverence, so people can visit the grove and really feel that they're in the presence of ancient giants. It's a really special place.
I completely agree. I've done the giant hike where you get off the paved trail and you really go several miles back into the country, and you're the only one there. And the stillness is palpable. And I even remember finding one tree that you could walk into the center and you could sit down inside the stillness, and a deer walked in there while I was sitting in there. And it was kind of clearly where his home was, but it was just a very special, unique experience that very few people would see because the roads don't allow that sort of thing to happen. And so it's neat that you're making that possible.
Yeah, it's been a really neat project to be a part of. It is a huge undertaking, a big multifaceted planning and design effort, but the overarching goal has been ecological health, really restoring that health of the trees. So that they'll be around for you and I to have those experiences and to connect with the park in that way.
So a question I might have is the Park Service and the NPS, it's created by the government, it's funded by taxpayer dollars. Why do you also need private funding to protect what the government has set up?
Well, that's a great question. And nationwide, all of the Park Service units have a park partner organization such as ourselves. And the federal dollars just get you so far. And so we like to think of our donor contributions as adding what we call that margin of excellence. You know, it's the thing that makes the experience that much greater, or that provides that next level of research into an endangered or threatened species. This park would be here and would be protected with just federal dollars alone, but it would be a different place. Mm-hmm. And Yosemite is, the park sells itself. It's such a draw, and there's so many people who love it that we feel very fortunate to have such a strong donor base.
Well, that's great. So tell us about some of the other projects that are going on.
So this would be a really great time to see a really short video that we have that just gives an overview of everything we do in the park.
Through our donors, Yosemite Conservancy is proud to provide projects and programs that help protect and preserve Yosemite National Park for future generations while enhancing the visitor experience today.
I think most people don't even realize that the work of Yosemite Conservancy is all around them when they visit the park. Whether they're at an overlook looking at the scenery, whether they're storing their food in a bear-proof food locker, whether they're taking a stroll on a boardwalk across a restored meadow, whether they're at a junior ranger program or at a theater program. People are touched by the Yosemite Conservancy almost every step they take in Yosemite National Park.
Yosemite Conservancy gives us a base of financial support, so they're phenomenal. We need to thank Yosemite Conservancy for all their phenomenal work. Without them, the spectrum of our programs would be much smaller.
Programs like the California Conservation Corps, Youth Conservation Corps, Parks in Focus, Youth in Yosemite Adventurous Challenge, these programs wouldn't run if it wasn't for the support of the Conservancy.
Through the support of our donors, we've been able to provide projects and programs at over $75 million, providing a margin of excellence to keep Yosemite the special place it is for the world.
By joining the Conservancy, I become part of a legacy that goes all the way back to John Muir and Ansel Adams and Teddy Roosevelt, and even though I'm only a little tiny part of that, I'm a part of it, and it's wonderful.
The visitor experience in Yosemite could not be as magical, and the resources could not be as well protected without the contributions of the Yosemite Conservancy.
Great.
Some of the projects that you may be familiar with include big efforts that have happened in the past, such as the restoration of the Lower Yosemite Falls Trail. That was our kind of last big undertaking in partnership with the park. We've also restored overlooks. So if you think of the Glacier Point overlook, of Tunnel View overlook, these really kind of iconic views of the park, those have been through the support of Yosemite Conservancy donors. The 41 new projects that we have queued up this year include trail maintenance and restoration, and this is something that we've been committed to and have supported for decades. And so every year there are trail crews who are funded with Yosemite Conservancy dollars. And a couple of the projects happening this year include working on the JMP in the Lyle Canyon. So if you've ever hiked along the Lyle Canyon of the Tuolumne, or Lyle Fork of the Tuolumne River, you can imagine that trail that passes through a lot of really beautiful meadow areas. Well, one thing that the park has realized over time is that it's not always the greatest place for a trail, especially as it gets rutted out and you have multiple trail ruts. So this is sort of a theme throughout the park in terms of moving a trail to a higher, drier place and then being able to restore the hydrology back to the meadow. Another really cool trail project, and one of my favorites, is creating a loop trail around Tenaya Lake. And I'm sure many of us have spent many hours on Tenaya Lake. And so it'd be really nice to be able to take your family around the whole lake. And that, up until now, has been impossible.
Yeah, that would that would be spectacular. And not to jump in, but just for people who have never really experienced or seen a trail crew at work, can you describe, like for someone who is donating and where that money is going, what trail crews are? Because I think a lot of people think of like a road crew and heavy machinery, and they don't understand the backbreaking work and dedication that goes into actually building and maintaining these trails. So it'd be great if you could shed some light on where those dollars are actually going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Yosemite is kind of legendary in the whole Park Service system for having the expertise to do really beautiful, sustainable trail work. And so these are crews that are often going into the backcountry, so they're in the wilderness, which means that they're not using any sort of power tools. These are hand tools because you're in pristine wilderness. And then most of the rock work that is done is actually with dry stone masonry techniques. So the process it's art. They're finding the perfect rock to fit into creating a new step, or creating a rock wall, or creating water bars to prevent erosion over time. And so the idea is these trail crews, whether they be roving through the backcountry or working on front country trails, they're working in a tight-knit group. They've honed their skills, and they're using some pretty cool techniques, such as rigging high lines to move these big rocks around. So yeah, it's a really cool legacy here in Yosemite of just excellent trail work.
Well, that's great. I noticed that we have a couple people viewing, so if you have any questions, please feel free to click on the Ask Questions app and you can type in questions, and as I see them pop up, I'll pose them to Schuyler and we'll try to answer any questions you have, but in the meantime we can keep talking about these amazing projects that you're doing and how we can all support them.
Yeah, so on the subject of trails, I noticed that a lot of your films are adventure related, and of course I noticed that there's some climbing films. And so one of the projects that we have funded over the past 4 years now is to restore and to delineate the climbing access trails. So these are often little spur trails that go off of a major trail system, but these are the trails that are getting climbers to the base of the route. And in the past, they were kind of just maintained by climbers. They weren't necessarily on the NPS roster of trail maintenance. And so it's been really exciting. There was a lot of very tangible, visible improvement over the last 4 years to trails that get a ton of traffic, but weren't built to NPS standards. They were basically just social use trails. So that's been a really cool project that has also drawn a lot of people in, and the park has started a climbing stewardship intern program where basically there's just a lot of motivation and energy, and people are really excited to get out there and work on these trails and get back to the park. So that's been a really fun project, and just all of the partnership with various donors and then volunteer groups who come in and want to work on the project. Another project that we have.
Now, just I want to back up for 1 second. You said people can come in and volunteer and help, not only just give money, but they can actually come actively be a part of these crews and this maintenance. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we, the Park Service invites volunteer crews to come in and work on these climbing trails, and it's organized through the climbing ranger program.
That's like going to a dude ranch, but much better.
Yeah, you get to climb. And then another project that has been really fun has been it's the Ask a Climber program, and we partnered with the Yosemite Climbing Association to purchase some high-powered telescopes. And folks from the Climbing Steward internship program and also just climbing rangers will position themselves at the El Cap Bridge, and the program runs May through October from 10 in the morning to 2 p.m. every day of the week. And they're interpreting what's going on up there on the wall. And so it's been super popular. They'll get these huge crowds of people gathered around the telescope, and with questions like, how do they get the rope up there? How many days are the climbers up there? How do they know where to go? And so the rangers have a portaledge, and they have all the gear, and they have maps that show all of the different routes up El Cap. So that's been a really fun project to just educate visitors on what are all these climbers doing here. It's been a lot of fun to see how excited people have been to learn about it.
That's great, and for anybody who's never seen what it looks like up close, you can go online to the El Cap report, where a man named Tom Evans, who's been spending probably the last 30 years or longer photographing the climbers from that bridge. You can see those pictures, and then when you're in Yosemite, it sounds like you can now go live. You might meet Tom, but you can certainly work with the rangers and have that experience yourself actually there, which is a million times greater than seeing it online. But to wet your whistle, you can check out the El Cap report.
Yeah, get you excited to come here. So other projects that we're funding this year, we have a long history of funding wildlife-related projects. And this year we have a really exciting group of projects, many of them aimed at surveying and looking for rare or endangered species in the park, such as the pika, Pacific fisher. We've had a long-standing peregrine falcon project. You might see peregrines flying around El Cap as well if you're really lucky. And also bears, of course. It's Yosemite, so we've supported a lot of bear projects from installing food lockers. We also rent the bear canisters that are required for any kind of backcountry travel. And then last year, we funded a project to fit 15 bears with GPS collars.
Oh, wow.
So up until now, the bears that were misbehaving were sometimes fitted with just a VHS collar. But it's much harder to follow that. It's much more labor intensive. But with these GPS collars, the park is just getting this wealth of location data on these bears and learning, what's going on when they leave the valley. And so that's been really fascinating and filled in a lot of holes and answered a lot of questions about, what's going on with bears.
So typically, that is kind of curious. Like when they're not in the valley, how big of an area do they actually roam across? Do you have any idea in terms of square mileage or anything?
Well,
like that?
there are some bears who are called, valley residents that have found a great place, and it's prime black bear habitat in the valley. So there are some bears who don't go that far, and then there are other younger males who are roaming far outside the park borders. And so it depends on the age and the gender and the time of year. Obviously, they go looking for mates at certain times of year, and then they roam further. But the maps actually of these location data will be made public via a Park Service blog, so people will be able to check out where certain bears are going, which is really exciting.
That's neat. So you could have like an adopt a bear.
Yeah. I mean, you could decide to just follow a bear that has one of these collars. It's amazing technology for following wildlife around without bothering them too very much, except just to get the collar on.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, it is fascinating to see how that intersection of technology and nature conservation has actually come together where it complements and doesn't distract each other.
It's pretty amazing. We funded another bear project 2 years ago that set up these monitoring boxes in developed areas throughout the park. So campgrounds, parking lots, areas where bears were getting into trouble. And if a collared bear, so either a VHF collar or GPS collared bear, came into the boundary of this developed area, the monitoring box would pick up the signal and send a message on the park radio system to say, we have bear 48 in Yellow Pines campground. And so it's totally amazing. It certainly makes the job of the wildlife managers a little bit easier.
And in the terms of education too, like I know that you'd sent over a video about youth in Yosemite, so can you talk, as you're evolving with some of the stuff of where that plays in terms of how youth can become involved in education or activism?
Yeah, this program has changed my life and my viewpoints about these places, these natural places.
I honestly will probably remember this for the rest of my life, and I know the peers and I have been changed by this experience.
I mean, it honestly did change my life.
I just became a whole, happier, stronger person than what I was when I came here.
So the Youth in Yosemite programs are vital to Yosemite and the youth who participate in them, because today so many of our youth in our communities and our country and internationally are disconnected from nature. The only way that places like Yosemite and public lands will thrive in the future is through opportunities for youth to become connected to them. They're the next leaders, they're the next constituents, the voters, the managers, the superintendents, the biologists, the educators. They are the next generation. And these programs help to make meaningful and lifelong connections for youth to places like Yosemite.
When I look at some of the young people that you see again years later, and they tell you how important that experience was, you find that you're not just think you're doing good work, but you really are doing the good work. And I can honestly say that without Yosemite Conservancy, none of these programs would exist.
I would like to say thank you to all the people who have found it in their heart to give to this place and to the people who are going to be caring for it one day.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I really thank you for supporting this program and making it possible.
I'm extremely thankful, and these are tears of joy.
I would just say thank you so much. And honestly, I don't think you could give anybody a greater gift.
Thank you!
Yeah, absolutely. So we are really committed to bringing youth to the park and to funding programs that bring youth of all ages to the park. You know, the idea is we want to cultivate that next generation of stewards. And so, so this year we support 12 different youth programs, and they range from a 1-hour junior ranger program that's suitable for kids, you know, age 3 to maybe 16. I really like the junior ranger programs too, so maybe expand that age out. But they range from that kind of a program to a residential program where the kids are actually here in the park. It's more immersive. So one example of that would be the Adventure Risk Challenge program, which invites high school youth, generally from Central Valley towns, to come to the park, many of them for the first time, and they have to leave their cell phones, their computers, all of that at home, and they come here for 40 days and 40 nights. And it's not a biblical program at all. That's just a coincidence. But it's focused on developing that next generation of leaders and giving them that, instilling that appreciation for natural areas, for open space, for protected lands. So they have a really dynamic 40 days here of rope courses and river rafting, but then also courses and classwork in the cultural and natural history of Yosemite. They get to work one-on-one with park staff and just gain an understanding of what it means to be in a protected area and how these protected areas are so important to people, you know, all over the world. So yeah, the youth programs are really cool. You know, they're very much focused on creating life-changing experiences for kids. We have another one that actually like brings together this legacy of trail maintenance and bringing youth to the park, and that's partnering with the California Conservation Corps. And so each summer, and again, this goes back decades now, we've funded 2 crews. Each crew is roughly 13 kids, and they're aged 18 to 22. So they arrive in the park in April, and they hone their skills in the front country for a couple months. And then as soon as they can, you know, usually we have snow up in these mountains. and they have to wait for the snow to clear. This year might be a little different. But as soon as they can get into the backcountry, they go and they set up backcountry camp and provide trail restoration and rehabilitation out of these backcountry camps. And they're there until September. So it is just this like transformational experience.
That's absolutely amazing. I mean, there's, gosh, I mean, 41 projects. I wish we could talk about all of them today, but we're starting to run low on time. But where can people find out about everything that's going on with the Conservancy, and how can they stay up to date and involved?
Well, if you just need your Yosemite fix, you can check out any of our webcams at yosemiteconservancy.org, and you'll see the link for the webcam. And there's also just a wealth of information about our current projects, our past projects, and also the programs that we are running here in the park. So please check out yosemiteconservancy.org. And if you have any questions, we're also all available and ready to answer and help people out in any way.
And for people that have a few extra dollars that they can be philanthropic, the support is greatly needed. It helps enable all these amazing pieces to happen. But it seems like you talk about like $12 million, $20 million budgets. Is there a minimum amount that people need to give to make a difference, or how can people support? Like I know when I was in my 20s, clearly I didn't have thousands or hundreds to give. Like so, I gave what I could, but I think it's important to state that every little bit helps. So I mean, at what level can people become involved and be a supporter of the Conservancy?
So there's absolutely no minimum level. Absolutely not. Most of our donors give $50 and under. So absolutely no minimum level. I think you're right. It's in the numbers, and the numbers of supporters of Yosemite, we're very lucky, is high. Another way to give, if you're interested and get a little bit back for it, is to purchase one of the state Yosemite license plates. So the license plate program, a piece of that money comes right back to the park to support all of these projects and programs.
That's great. So if you skip Starbucks for one day a month, you can probably right there's a great donation for the year. And then you're going to have to drive anyway, so you might as well get a Yosemite license plate. And with that plate, then the best thing to do next would be to drive up to the park, where you can now enjoy everything that the Conservancy is offering and have a great experience that you can come back and carry with you for your whole life and share with your friends.
Absolutely right. And you can stop in the bookstore and pick up a book, and that money then comes back to the park as well.
This all sounds great. Thank you so much for your time. I'm extremely excited to, after all these years of supporting, be able to be working straight with you, because as you mentioned earlier, this is the Mountain Adventure Film Festival. Many of our films deal with rock climbers that have amazing adventures in Yosemite. And there's also a lot of amazing conservation documentaries that deal with land preservation, wildlife preservation, and all the concepts we talked about here. And so I think those are all incredible opportunities to support the filmmakers who are helping to provide us access to things that we may not experience directly, but understanding that every piece of what you see in there is accessible to you as an individual. And our hope is, as a festival, is that these films will inspire you to go take part in that and to take action and to be involved. So from the Mountain Adventure Film Festival, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Schuyler to say a few parting words.
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. We very much appreciate being able to get the word out and share with folks what it is we're doing. So absolutely, please come to the park, fall in love with the park, and then remember to give back to the park. Thanks so much.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone.